What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg with a look at the Alcatel One Touch Idol 3. So this is available in two sizes, 4.7 inch and 5.5 inch, and we're going to take a look at the 5.5 inch. Now this is available for $249 off contract, and you can buy this on Amazon.com, and I'll leave a link in the description below. So basically this is an unlocked phone, works on GSM carriers like T-Mobile and AT&T on their LTE network, so all you have to do is pop in the SIM. So this is a budget-oriented flagship phone. So basically this has some flagship specs, but a budget price. So this is kind of similar to the approach of the OnePlus One. We also have an octa-core Snapdragon 615 processor, which combines two quad cores, one clocked at 1.5, the other clocked at 1 gigahertz. We have 2 gigs of RAM, 16 or 32 gigs of internal storage, and we do have a micro SD card slot that supports 128 gigs. In terms of camera, we have a 13 megapixel camera on the back, good for 1080p video, and we also have an 8 megapixel camera on the front for 1080p video, so that's quite impressive. We also have a set of front-facing stereo speakers, which is unique for budget phones. This also enables a unique feature to the Idol 3, which is reversibility. So basically, you can flip this phone in either direction and answer a phone call because both speakers can act as an earpiece. In terms of our GPU, we have the Adreno 405, and we'll test this out with some benchmarks. All right, first up, I want to get to the unboxing of the Idol 3. Now, they've given this to me in a press kit, so it's really here to highlight some of the major features of the phone. You will not get anything like this when you purchase yours, but you can see we have the slide to unlock, highlighting the fact that this is a completely unlocked phone. This will work on your carrier if it's a GSM carrier like AT&T or T-Mobile. Flip it open here, nice magnetic cover. We have unlocked the unexpected, and then we have these little flaps here. So we have unlock bright. If we look at the inside of that, that's referring to the 5.5 inch full HD 1080p Technicolor display. We also have unlock loud. So we have dual front-facing speakers featuring JBL audio. So that's a really nice feature to have. And then we have unlock moment. So let's go ahead and flip this open without hitting the camera. So this is highlighting the 13 megapixel camera with the Sony sensor. Inside we have our phone, but of course we have our accessories on this side. Again, highlighting all the major features. Flipping this open, we'll find our power adapter, pretty standard stuff, branded Alcatel One Touch. We also have a press kit on a USB. This is a really tiny USB. It folds out. It's kind of cool here. We also have our SIM ejection tool. We also get our micro USB 2.0 charging cable. Again, every phone needs that. We also have a set of JBL headphones. Again, kind of premium headphones for a budget phone. So we're going to take a listen to these to see how they sound, but you do have replacement ear tips. So if you need to find the right size, you have some options. These headphones also include an inline remote control and microphone. And finally, we have the 5.5 inch Alcatel One Touch Idol 3 with some stickers on the back. Let's go and peel those off. All right, taking a close look at our device, we have a 5.5 inch full 1080p display, good for 401 pixels per inch. It's a nice bright LCD IPS panel, which is laminated to the glass. So it's a really nice looking display. Now at the top, we have our front facing 8 megapixel wide angle lens, good for 1080p at 30 frames per second. So that's a pretty impressive camera, especially for a budget phone. Up top, you'll find one of these stereo speakers. This also acts as your earpiece. Toward the bottom, you'll find another stereo speaker, which can also act as your earpiece if you flip the phone upside down. Now, high up on the right side, we'll find our volume rocker. On the left side, we'll find our sleep wake power button, which is kind of a strange positioning unless you're left-handed, so you may appreciate this. But if you're right-handed, it's kind of a strange reach to reach that power button along the left side. At the top, we have our headphone jack and one of the microphones. Toward the bottom, we find our micro USB 2.0 port and another microphone. Now, along the back, we have that 13 megapixel camera, good for 1080p at 30 frames per second. So unfortunately, no 4K here. We also have a single LED flash. The good thing with this camera is that it's nice and flush, so it doesn't protrude from the body. Also on the left side, just below the power button, is the combination SIM tray and micro SD card slot. Now this is a standard micro SIM, no nano SIM here, so you have to use an adapter if you have a nano SIM. But again, you have a single tray for both, which is kind of novel. We haven't seen that before, and it's a nice solid metal tray. Now taking a close look at the design of the Idol 3, it's a fairly compact 5.5 inch phone, more compact than the OnePlus One or the iPhone 6 Plus, but not quite as compact as the LG G3 or the G4. Now the display is laminated to the cover glass, and the cover glass has this floating design. So basically it looks like it's floating on top of the frame of the phone. This also means that these front-facing stereo speakers will not be muffled if you lay the phone flat because they are recessed a bit. Now they've made effective use of the materials here. Again, this is mostly plastic, but they've done a nice job with the finishes. So we have this nice hairline grain to the back panel, which looks kind of like a carbon material or maybe a brushed metal. Along the side, we have this chrome finish with these nice chrome accents, which kind of brighten up the phone. It looks a little more premium. But generally speaking, this feels a lot lighter than every other metal phone before, but doesn't feel like a cheap plastic phone either. Next up, let's take a look at the operating system here. So again, this is Lollipop, which is lightly skinned here. So you see a lot of standard Lollipop features on the lock screen. Now, one feature here is that you can double tap the screen to unlock it, wakes it up, or to wake it up. And then you can swipe on one of these icons to launch into the camera or into the phone dialer. You also have these function keys on the front, and all you have to do is double tap them to activate a feature. Now, for example, you have your QR code reader. So if you just double tap it, launches into the camera app, brings up the QR reader. So let's go back to that lock screen to show you the others. We also have a calculator, launches into the calculator app, again pretty close to stock Android. Now if you want to disable that feature, just go to settings, go to your lock screen controls, and disable FUNC, F-U-N-C. So if you don't want those on the lock screen, they're now turned off. Now, the design of the interface is pretty consistent with Android 5.0. For the most part, it is stock Android 5.0 with a few tweaks here. So, for example, the icons have been updated, and I think they did a nice job matching the design of Lollipop. You can see when you open up a folder, it folds out here in sort of this origami view. You also have some apps that act as widgets, which is kind of a novel idea here. So, for example, we have a sound recorder, which pops out this little widget, so you can start recording audio without having to open up the app. And then you can maximize it if you want just by hitting the icon in the upper right. And again, the design is very consistent with stock Android. Now, you can also double tap on the home screen to lock the device. You can also double tap again to wake it up. Now, in terms of these navigation keys, of course, we have home, back, and overview. This allows us to see all of the open or recently accessed apps. So you can swipe them away to close them or bring them forward. You can also use this little clear all icon right here to clear them all out. Swiping down from the top, we get to our notifications, again, pretty close to stock Android. You can swipe down again to get to your quick setting toggles along with our brightness slider. You can jump to your settings panel. You can see your battery status, stuff like that. Also, you can see we do have some additional settings here, which are unique to this device. So we do have a flashlight, so you can turn on the flashlight. We also have reversible, so you can turn off the reversible mode if you don't want it. So what is reversible mode? Well, if you flip the phone upside down, it'll reorientate the entire OS here. And the great thing is that because we have speakers on the top and bottom, whatever speaker is at the top will be your earpiece. So that's kind of nice. Of course, your cameras will change positioning as well as the buttons. So sometimes it's actually kind of hard to tell which way is up until you look at the back or feel for the buttons. You can tap anywhere on the home screen to edit your home screen, so you can rearrange these panels like so. So if you want to change what is your home screen, just drag and drop it to the front. Again, very stock Android. You have your wallpapers, you have your widgets, so you can drag and drop widgets to your home screen, and then you can jump to your settings panel. Now, in terms of the app selection, it's mostly Google apps here, but a few things have been added. So we have Mix, which is a music player. So this is the onboard music player. Of course, you could just use Google Play if you want. We also have a note-taking app, which is handy to have. We have a radio app, so all I have to do is connect a set of headphones, and again, the design is pretty consistent with Android 5.0. We also have Wi-Fi display, which uses the standard protocols to mirror the display and audio of this device on a compatible TV, such as a Samsung Smart TV. We also have this Tags app for using NFC tags, so if you want to create a macro for NFC, this is where you can do it. We also have WPS Office, so we do get a full Office suite here in addition to Google's own Office suite. So if you want to read, edit, or open standard documents like Doc or XLS or PDFs or TXTs or PowerPoint, you can do that right here. We also have something called Facetune, which is basically a photo editor for creating the perfect selfie if you want. That's a third-party app that came installed. Let's take a look at our settings panel. We're just going to jump to our settings here. Now, it's fairly close to stock Android. We can go up here to search for things. So if you just want to search for display, brings you instant results. It takes you right to it. Now, there are a few differences here I want to point out. One of them is this gesture. So under devices, you'll find this gestures control panel. So we have double tap screen to wake it up. So you can turn this on and off. You can also double tap again on the home screen to put it back to sleep. We have turn over to mute, pretty self-explanatory. And we have turn over to activate snooze. So if your alarm goes off, just flip the phone upside down or face down and you're good. Taking a look at the camera app, it's pretty close to stock Android. A pretty simple and user-friendly interface. You can snap your photograph just by hitting the shutter release. You can pinch in and out to zoom. You can tap anywhere on the scene to adjust exposure and focus manually. We also have our modes here, so you can select from auto mode, HDR, panorama, manual mode, so if you want manual control over all your settings here. So let's jump to that and see what we get. So with manual mode, if you tap up here, you get to all your manual controls. So we can adjust our white balance. We have our focus. We also have our shutter speed and our ISO settings. We also have our scanner for QR codes and barcodes, and then we have Face Beauty, which will basically soften the details of any faces it detects in the scene. We can also start recording video, and we do have 1080p at 30 frames per second. Unfortunately, no 4K here. So you can snap photographs while recording video. You can also pinch in and out to zoom, and you do have continuous autofocusing in this video camera, but you can tap anywhere to manually adjust exposure and focus. We can also swipe in from the left edge here to get to all of our modes, and at the bottom we'll find our settings panel. This is where we can adjust our size, so we can see our photo size. So 13 megapixels is 4:3, but if you want 16:9, you step down to 10 megapixels. We can also adjust our video quality. We have 1080p at maximum, but of course you can step down to 720 or 480. And if you want to reset everything back to factory defaults, all you have to do is hit this button at the bottom. Now, in terms of camera quality, I'm actually really impressed by the still camera. It produces really sharp, clear results with quick autofocusing, delivers good color accuracy, and good exposure under most conditions. Especially in daylight conditions, color reproduction is excellent. So I'm actually really surprised by the performance of this camera. It's much better than I expected, and is right up there with other flagship phones. Now, in terms of low light quality, this is where things get a little weaker. That's to be expected here. But low light quality tends to be a little soft, a lot of processing, so you do see some grain. And of course, you lose a lot of detail and exposure isn't great, but the LED flash does a fairly decent job, although the LED light doesn't produce the most natural looking color. Now, in terms of video quality, I'm less impressed here than I am with the still camera, but it does deliver pretty solid results. The great thing here is that we do have really solid stabilization, software stabilization, not optical image stabilization, but the software stabilization does a really nice job here. So handheld video actually looks pretty decent. Now, my only concern with the video on this camera is that it tends to underexpose, so things tend to be lost in shadow, although it doesn't overexpose and wash out things either, and we have pretty good color reproduction. The other issue is that things tend to look really soft. We lose some detail as it over-processes the video. So generally speaking, the camera is actually really foolproof and easy to use and delivers pretty reliable results. What's going on, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, testing out the front-facing camera of the Idol 3, which is good for 8 megapixels. That's quite a bit for a front-facing camera, especially on the budget phone. We also have a nice wide-angle lens, so it really fills up the camera here, so you can see basically the entire room if I hold it farther away here. So pretty impressive overall. The only thing I notice here is that the frame rate seems to be kind of low, even though this is 1080p at 30 frames per second, but it does a nice job with exposure, and audio is pretty good. Now let's take a listen to those front-facing stereo speakers and compare them to the side-facing mono speaker on the OnePlus One. What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a long-awaited MacBook, which returns with a razor-thin, all-metal design, stunning Retina display, all-new keyboard and Force Touch trackpad, along with a fanless system, which makes the MacBook completely silent and the first fanless MacBook. The new MacBook also launches with a single USB Type-C connector, combining charging, data, display output, and more. Now, in terms of the included JBL headphones, they're pretty impressive considering that most phones in this price range do not even include headphones at all. And you have these higher end JBL headphones which sound a bit better than average. So in conjunction with the audio processing on board the phone, these headphones sound nice, open, and clear. That's usually not the case with in-ear style headphones, which tend to sound a bit closed. The only problem with these headphones is that they lack warmth or bass to the audio. So a lot of people who want bass or punch to their headphones may not like these. Now, taking a look at our Geekbench 3 scores, you can see a fairly low single-core score, but a pretty high multi-core score. Now, if you compare this to the OnePlus One, similarly priced, you can see better single-core performance, but a weaker multi-core performance. Now, if you compare this to a flagship phone that costs considerably more, the iPhone 6 Plus, you can see obviously a big difference in the single-core score, but a smaller difference in the multi-core score. Now, in terms of battery life, we have a 2,910 milliamp hour battery. That's actually fairly large here, and it delivers pretty average results. I get about 4 hours of on-screen time at maximum brightness, which is pretty decent. So in the end, this phone really benefits from lowered expectation and exceeds them with great performance, a beautiful display, great software experience thanks to a near-stock Android experience, fantastic audio thanks to front-facing stereo speakers, and cameras that sometimes rival flagship phones and deliver pretty solid results under all conditions. So I'm generally impressed by the Idol 3, and it's definitely something I can recommend for people on a budget. So that's going to do for me in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.